Alright, it's one of the big ones, it's one of the big dogs, it's Cody Jinks with 2 albums that he has dropped, and we got a ton to talk about.
There's a black and a white wolf in me, and I live and I die by which one I feel.
If you're one of the people that follows the Texas scene and the red dirt scene and the indie country scene or whatever you want to call it, you know that this was a very big past 2 weeks because Cody Jinks dropped not one, but 2 albums. If you are somebody that mostly follows the Nashville scene, but you're trying to dip your toe into the world of like the Turnpike Troubadours, or maybe you listen to Tyler Childers and you're starting to look outside of Nashville and you don't really know where to start, this is a good video for you because Cody Jinks is one of the big players in that world. Ever since Adobe Sessions, which was now about 5 years ago, Cody Jinks has really been on a steady rise and established himself as one of the most thoughtful songwriters and compelling voices in the independent country music scene. For the uninitiated, Cody hails from Texas, and he used to have a metal band, but for the past decade, he's been making country music, which is the music he grew up with. I first discovered Cody Jinks because of The Rock. The Rock has been a major force for promoting the music of Cody Jinks. He loves it. It resonates with him. I just saw some Instagram post and checked it out, and ever since then, I've been a major fan. But it's the content of his songwriting that's really established him as a major player and kind of a modern country outlaw. It's unflinchingly honest. It's so much about his inner demons. He really is struggling to be a good man. And on songs like Cast No Stones and on songs like Head Case and all through these 2 albums, you're hearing shades of religiosity and struggle and possibly addiction. I can never pick up if that's an actual narrative in his music or just, my own read of some of these battles with his demons, but it's really real. And I think that's why people are drawn to him. I even put Lifers, his last album, in my top 10 albums of 2018. That album was actually released through a Nashville label called Rounder Records, but it seems like that was a one-off for Cody. Maybe he wasn't pleased with his experience there, but he has decided to release these 2 albums independently. So first I want to talk about both albums, and then I'll talk about each one individually. And I actually don't think it's that hard to talk about both albums because I think they're dealing with really similar content. When Cody announced that he was going to be releasing After the Fire and The Wanting, he also released on his website an entire album experience where fans can explore the albums, they can look at the lyrics, they can see who wrote them, they can see little kind of interview tidbits from the songwriters behind each song. And, look, I take a lot of notes before my videos. I don't know if you guys realize this, but I have all my track list written out for everything on both albums and all my notes for them, because if there's only one criticism I would have of this amazing album experience that I wish more indie artists would do, I just wish there was one button where you could click and see all the lyrics and songwriters instead of having to go to each page. There's a lot of songwriters that if you follow the Texas scene, you will recognize them in the credits of this album. People like Larry Hooper and Ward Davis and Paul Cauthen. And then the people that Cody really seems to connect with and co-writes a lot with on this, Josh Morningstar, Tennessee Jet, and then actually his wife, Rebecca Jinks. There's a lot of songwriters in the mix on these 2 records, and yet I think there are some very, very obvious and cohesive themes that make it feel like a true collection of songs and not just a random smattering. Duality is a huge theme. I mean, look at the cover of The Wanting. It is a black wolf and a white wolf. And the white wolf's kind of coming out of the black wolf, and that's straight out of this song called Which One I Feed. This kind of light and dark, good and bad is all what Cody's music is about. It actually reminds me a lot of Eric Church in a way. There's this sort of journey that he is on, and he is trying to be a good man, a committed man, a godly man. I think these records are really explicitly Christian. And if you are Christian listening to them, and I am, you might hear them in a totally different way than other people do. Though I think the themes of wanting to be better and wanting to conquer your demons are universal no matter what you believe. The other big theme that goes across both of these records is that fame ain't all that, and that the attention he receives is actually a burden to him and possibly to his marriage and to his friendships, and that he's struggling with it. And it's interesting because I sit here as a listener and I'm like, Cody, you don't even have music videos. What am I supposed to put in this video? What am I supposed to interlay my clips with? You barely have any promo pictures. You're always under a big hat and glasses or something. And you're sitting there worried about how famous you are. But, he is on a big stage. he does have a lot of people listening to him and looking at him, and it's clear he wants to hold that at a distance and sees it as an existential threat to him and to his marriage. And so I actually have a lot of respect for him, and I weirdly really understand it, because even though I'm sitting here reviewing albums, it's not so different. This weird tightrope where you're putting yourself out there and you recognize there's something unhealthy and vain about doing that, even as you really want to do it. The other thing that actually really came to mind when I was listening to these was that song, I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner. I mean, one of my favorite songs ever. I've always wanted there to be a country redo of this. I don't know what it would be called. I Took a Pill in Shakota. But I think that song really captures that all this attention, all this fame, it's bad for me. And you don't want to be like me. So if you think that song is as interesting as I certainly did, I think these records might be thematically something that you'd be into. But now let's jump into talking about each of them individually. After the Fire is the first album that dropped from this dual release. And the first thing I want to mention is the cover. Now, the cover, I've wondered since they released the covers, and he always has these kind of cool painted covers. Is this a middle finger that is in the remnants of a fire that was burning? Because that's pretty easy to see how that might be the case. Or is this like a weird burned fire log man that is walking out of a fire off to seek some reprieve? Because the very first song on this, the title track, After the Fire, is about, seeking a cool drink of water after the fire. I don't know. I kind of have always seen this as a person walking out of the fire, but I did a poll on Instagram and like 90% of people said, no, this is a big middle finger. And maybe that's toward Nashville because he had this whole Nashville release strategy last time and maybe he's mad about it, but or maybe he's mad at the sky, or maybe it's none of these things. Maybe these are just two logs leaned against each other, but I'd love to know your thoughts on what I'm looking at here in the After the Fire cover. Now, of the two releases, After the Fire is definitely a little bit more subdued and a little bit tighter. It's only 10 songs, and one of them, the final one, is an instrumental, but this is a really reflective album. It's a little bit quieter in its sound, and I would say a touch more thoughtful in its songwriting. In some ways, I feel like After the Fire is an album about a man who used to be a self-loather. That's why I kind of always think Addiction is a piece of Cody Jinks' story, is because he seems like someone that has a very, very, very low view of himself. And I kind of think that these two albums are him being released from that, or outgrowing it, or maturing past that, and recognizing, okay, it's not just about my own drama, my own shame, my own proclivity to be bad. It's also about being a good husband to my wife. It's also about continuing to move. I think some of those emotions are captured on a song like Ain't a Train, where he is saying that, like, things are going well, and it's kind of easier in some ways when everything in life's against you, but maybe the light at the end of the tunnel ain't a train. Maybe there's not something that's coming to just crush me. Maybe there's something good ahead of me. It's almost this uncomfortable hope. I think you get a little bit more of dipping his toe into this sort of better version of himself on a song like One Good Decision, which is a shuffle towards the end of the record. Really reminds me of like Randy Travis, actually, and it's a song about staying faithful and committed, and it's like, if I stay out here, I might make some decisions I don't want to make. I might talk too long to this girl or do a little bit more, and I don't want to do that because I'm a husband. It's kind of like Honey, I'm Good, but the country version. All that's not to say that there's not any negative reflection upon himself on this record, because there definitely is, and probably the highlight of this first disc is Tell 'Em What It's Like.
Tell 'em what it's like, Beck, because they think they want to know.
This is a song Cody wrote with Josh Morningstar, and it was actually inspired by a letter of kind of thoughts that his wife wrote to him. And it's about how it ain't all that glamorous to be married to a rock star. The nickname for his wife, Rebecca, is Beck, and all through the song he's addressing her. Tell him what it's like, Beck, to be someone some love to hate. Your pretty smile and all your grace, it wears you thin. And tell him what it's like, Beck, when I'm curled up on the floor and I can't take it anymore and I'm a mess. The song is kind of a mea culpa that she's almost a forgotten part of this whole equation of his success. And he's on the road and life's hard for her. But why this song still feels like a maturation to me is that the narrative isn't just this cyclical shame cycle of Cody being like, I'm so bad, I'm a mess, I'm on the floor. There is that line, tell him what it's like, Beck. There is this reaching out. And so I think this album is really a step forward for Cody. It really feels to me like he's thinking more about others while knowing himself better and treating himself a little more gently. You get a little more of their marital relationship on the next song called Think What You Think. And this is a song that was co-written with David Banning. And I love this song because it's a unique concept for a song. It's basically, are you a hypocrite? Because how can you think what you think and drink like you drink? You say you believe one thing and your actions say another. And it's really just naming that. And I think that's a really cool concept for a song, and I think not many people are willing to explore their own hypocrisy. Now, not everything is so dreary and serious, although if those aren't your style, maybe Cody Jinks isn't for you. But there are a few songs which are just a little more romantic and earnest. Stuff like Dreamed with One and Someone to You are really affectionate love songs. But I think the most beautiful song and sentiment on this whole record is a song that Cody co-wrote with his wife, and it's called William and Wanda.
William, where you been? I've been waiting on you since only God knows when.
This is a song about Cody's grandparents, William and Wanda. And it's about how Wanda died first and then has been sitting up in heaven waiting for her husband to meet her there. And when William arrives, she's already acclimated and has all sorts of things she wants to show him. The garden and their son that died on his birthday. And William snaps right into kind of the marital rhythm and says, quit picking at me. I've been running late since 1953. It's a pretty unique, beautiful song. It reminds me so much of Mary by Patty Griffin, both in its sound and the fact that it's sort of generously imagining someone's mother, in this case their grandparents. And it also reminds me of Waiting on June, and that's, a pretty freaking high compliment if you've ever heard that song. A lot of my very favorite tracks on these two records are the ones Cody wrote with his wife, Rebecca. So clearly she brings out this kind of balance in him and an appreciation for beauty. Of the two albums, I do think this one is a little bit better in my mind. Like I said, it's a songwriting album. It's not going to be something if you want just big hooks every 2 seconds, but I would give it an 8 out of 10. My only criticisms of this record are just that I think some of the mixing is a little strange to me on both albums. It sounds really, I would recommend listening to it with headphones, because sometimes out of speakers, I find Cody's voice almost gets kind of pushed down in the mix in a weird way that I actually don't hear when I listen to it with headphones. So this is a good record to, if it's raining, just look out the window, maybe just like shed a tear and think about your life or something, and listen to it by yourself. Then let's move on to The Wanting. Now, The Wanting is the second album that Cody released, and I would say that it is definitely more musically robust. There's a lot more musical flourish. There's kind of some heavier tones, some louder sounds, some bigger percussion, even some more prominent like fiddle, and I would say the sound of it is pretty brooding overall. I think that's an appropriate sound because After the Fire is definitely an album that's more about commitment and his marriage, and I'd say that this one is more about kind of his internal psyche and his crazy in a way. In the title track on this one, which is called The Wanting, you're hearing Cody want to actually practically make steps in his life to progress, because it's not enough to just want change. That's not enough. But I actually think this album kind of exists in that drumroll phase where he's named that he does want something different for his life, and now what? So it's super reflective, super reflective overall as an album. Some of that reflection comes on the song Same Kind of Crazy as Me, which is a song that he co-wrote with Greg Jones and Ward Davis.
Why can't they just let it be the same kind of crazy as me?
This is a song in which Cody is saying, like, I feel different, I feel out of the norm, I don't go to church and I don't go to work. And yet, when I look at anybody in the world, I feel like I see people that are just as crazy as me. He gets into the ways that politics kind of falsely divide society. In this song, he says, there's more colors than red and blue to paint the elephant in the room. Like, obviously, there are big problems in our society, but we don't have to look at them in this red and blue binary. There's this refrain where he says, when I'm done, I pray that I'll meet the Father and the Son, And if I'm right, they'll be the same kind of crazy as me. Like maybe this is what the human condition is to see these dualities, to think through life in this complex way, even though it makes me feel insane. My favorite track on the record is track 3. It's another one that he co-wrote with Rebecca Jinks, so I hope that they keep writing together because, man, she brings out a real interesting and reflective side of him. It's a song called Never Alone, Always Lonely.
Backside of 30 came fast, but what's more?
Much like on the first album with Tell 'Em What It's Like, it's about the fame ain't all that, and that it actually is hard for him. He says, I'm never alone, always lonely. I'm easy to find, but seldom seen. Like, are people really seeing me? I'm never alone, always lonely, on a fast train through a slow-moving dream. I love all of the... I mean, I don't think that this is like the punniest, wordplay-iest record, and I like that stuff. I like some puns, I like alliteration. Cody's more just straightforward. That's definitely more his style, but the words are rock solid. That said, on a song called Which One I Feed that Josh Morningstar and Jada Dreyer wrote together, you do get a real poetry in the lyrics. I've been the song carried in on the breeze. I've wept with the willows, I fell with the leaves. I am the badlands and the silence it holds, a warrior who walks but is never alone. There's a black and a white wolf in me, and I live and I die by which one I feed. It's a war old as time, this fighting inside, and I live and I die by which one I feed. Again, light and dark, good and bad. If you guys have watched this channel for a while, you know those are themes that I really resonate with. I like all these shades of good and evil, and Cody really, his art is sort of pitting those against each other, and he is the battleground where this fight is taking place. The end of this record really drives home that idea. There's a few songs on here where Cody is calling himself a wounded mind, where he's saying, there's one song called It Don't Rain in California, and it's about how he's essentially a storm cloud. He needs to listen to a Rainbow by Casey Musgraves and see the rainbow over his head. But where essentially, like, I don't blame you for going out to California because it doesn't rain there, and anyone would get tired of this drear and this cloudiness. But I do still think that the same maturity that I heard on After the Fire, that Cody was kind of really recognizing, this is who I am, and it's not so down on himself, even though it is a little down on himself. I think that exists on The Wanting as well. On a song like A Bite of Something Sweet, another co-write with his wife, he's recognizing, when he needs a break, when he just needs to feel something good. And in a song like Where Angels Fear to Fly, I love that song. It's a co-write with Tennessee Jet. Because in some ways that song is saying, yeah, I've done some bad things that are maybe regrettable, or I've been in some rough seasons of life. But it's also saying, I'm uniquely the kind of person that can exist there. And there's a little hint of feeling proud of himself, that's where he comes from. I think the songs on this album are a lot more melodic. I think they're a little bit hookier. It goes down a lot easier. That said, I also think it's a little bit bloated, and I think the mixing issues are a little more pronounced on this record, and I just think it's not quite as tight as After the Fire was, so I'd have to dock it a few points, but I do think it's like, there's songs on here that I would lead with if I was showing someone about Cody, whereas After the Fire might be a little too subdued for a lot of people. So I would also give this record an 8 overall. I would give kind of the whole project, even, I think it's a little more than the sum of its parts. I would give it like an 8.3. But Cody's records really reward repeat listening, and I really like spending time in his psyche. Maybe I'm projecting a lot onto it. Maybe I'm saying he's more Christian or more kind of this more admirable than he would be comfortable with. I don't know. But to me, there's a lot that I was able to take away personally from this record, even though I haven't ever lived that rough. Even though I've never, done mushrooms before writing a song with someone else. But I am in touch with my shame. I am in touch with the darkness that exists inside of me. And I try not to shy away from it, and it makes me really drawn to music like this. So overall, I'm really pleased with these records. I just think Cody's so cool. And I love that he has become one of the big players in the alt country scene. And I can't wait to continue following him, and maybe one day, if he gets over this fame thing, even seeing a music video from him and putting that in one of my videos instead of these awful live concert clips that I use. But hey, that's for another time for now. Cody's gotta, work on himself and how he can be himself while becoming a lot more popular really quickly. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know what stood out to you on these records, and if you think I misinterpreted anything or missed anything, please give this video a like. Please subscribe if you like this. I try to post about 3 videos a week, 2 or 3 videos a week, and I talk about country music on this channel. And I think if you've kind of been lurking here, just go ahead, hit subscribe, and we can keep talking. All right, guys. Bye.